Welcome to Environmental Intelligence, Episode 53 for July 6th, 2026. Your Environmental Intelligence Briefing. New week, here's what's changed across Canadian environmental jurisdictions. Federal $26 million clean energy funding flows to 17 projects across Alberta and Saskatchewan. Ottawa directs $26 million to grid modernization and clean energy initiatives in Alberta and Saskatchewan. The July 4th Canada Gazette issue signals upcoming federal consultation opportunities. New Great Lakes PFAS transport research provides site-specific data for Ontario and Quebec practitioners. Flood declarations in Manitoba and Quebec highlight immediate needs for updated risk mapping on active files. If you only note one thing today for your compliance calendar, review project eligibility lists for overlap with current contaminated sites or remediation mandates in Alberta and Saskatchewan, while monitoring Canada Gazette Part 1 for 30-day comment windows opening this month. The federal government announced $26 million in funding for 17 clean energy, grid modernization, and energy security projects in Alberta and Saskatchewan. The allocation supports infrastructure upgrades that intersect with existing environmental compliance obligations under provincial EPEA and EMPA frameworks. Prior federal programs of this type have required recipients to integrate contaminated site assessments and spill prevention upgrades into funded work. Practitioners managing portfolios in these provinces should map funded sites against current Phase 2 or risk assessment files to identify new data sharing requirements. Implementation timelines remain unspecified in the announcement, but project lists are now public. Alberta and Saskatchewan firms should confirm whether their active mandates qualify for supplementary federal reporting streams. The weekly Canada Gazette Part 1 issue from July 4th was published with the standard complement of proposed regulations and notices. No specific environmental instruments are detailed in the index, but the edition triggers the routine 30-day comment cycle for any new CPA or Fisheries Act proposals contained within. The $26 million package targets grid and clean energy projects without explicit new regulatory text. Recipients must still satisfy existing provincial contaminated sites reporting under EPEA and EMPA when ground disturbance occurs. Transport modeling shows PFAS migration from water column to drinking water intakes and human serum in the Great Lakes Basin. Findings supply site-specific attenuation data usable in Ontario and Quebec risk assessments under OREG 153/04 and equivalent provincial protocols. Two class action filings allege inadequate municipal flood risk mitigation following June 20th rainfall in the Montreal area. Remediation and environmental consultants working on West Island sites should verify whether current closure reports address updated 2026 flood frequency assumptions. Manitoba communities issued emergency declarations as Assiniboine river levels rise toward a July 12th peak. Field teams should confirm groundwater monitoring schedules account for elevated water tables before resuming sampling. If you're working on contaminated sites files in Alberta or Saskatchewan, review federal clean energy project lists for new assessment triggers. If you're working on active Quebec LQE site files, cross-check West Island flood class action filings for updated risk assumptions. If you're working on Manitoba groundwater monitoring, update schedules to capture post-peak water table conditions after July 12th. If you're working on Saskatchewan projects, confirm whether any funded initiatives intersect existing EMPA reporting obligations. Mark your calendar for July 12th when the Assiniboine River flood peak is forecast. Mark your calendar for mid-July when Canada Gazette comment windows are expected to open on any Part 1 proposals from the July 4th issue. Mark your calendar for ongoing monitoring of Great Lakes PFAS transport data releases for incorporation into Ontario and Quebec risk assessments this quarter. A closure package for a former service station in southern Manitoba shows benzene concentrations stable in 3 wells but rising sharply in a 4th after spring flooding, despite no new release. The difference arises because the fourth well sits inside the active floodplain where the water table now intersects a residual LNAPL smear zone that was previously above the seasonal high. Under Manitoba Environment Act guidance and CCME Tier 1 protocols, practitioners must distinguish between plume migration and temporary hydraulic connection. The latter often produces transient exceedances that resolve once water levels drop. Experienced assessors cross-reference well hydrographs against river stage data from the nearest gauge rather than relying solely on quarterly snapshots. The most common mistake is assuming any post-flood increase signals a new source and triggering unnecessary additional investigation. The fix is to collect one extra round of water level and product thickness measurements during the next low water period before revising the conceptual site model. Tomorrow, watch for updates on any new SEPA proposals emerging from the July 4th Canada Gazette issue. That covers today's environmental intelligence. If you found this useful, share it with a colleague who needs to stay current. We'll be back with the next briefing, and if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at NARA Network, links in the show notes. And before you go, this show is part of the NARA Network, a family of daily podcasts on tech, science, and markets, each one a short, sharp briefing you can finish on the commute. If today earned its place in your feed, here's your next listen. Unintended Consequences, True Stories of Good Intentions That Backfired. Find every show free at naranetwork.com. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.